Hi folks, my name is Peter, and I'm also, like Jimmy, a recovered alcoholic. In June of 1988, God separated me from alcohol, and I've been sober since June 23rd, 1988, and I'm very grateful for that. I guess what I want to talk to you guys about is what it was like for me living at the hands of alcoholism and what my family looked like because of my alcoholism and what my family was doing with alcohol and drugs. This time in 1988, in the month of June, I was living up in New York. And I had been through 6 treatment centers, the type of places that Jennifer and Laurie work with. And my family couldn't believe that I turned into a full-blown drunk and was addicted to heroin and some other substances. They said it couldn't happen. But my family tree was evidence that it was going to happen. I grew up with a mom who was alcoholic and addicted to valium, and had been through maybe 15 or 20 institutions. And after several attempts of trying to commit suicide because of the bottom in addiction is wanting to die, she finally succeeded in taking her life in January of 1974. And I was all but 14. And I remember it was about 6 months later, I couldn't deal with that kind of pain. We didn't have therapists to go talk to. I gave up on God because God took my mom. And I will tell you, for many years, I despised God. So what do you do with this? You keep it in, you don't talk about your feelings, until one summer night, my friends were drinking, and I drank with them, and suddenly the pain of losing my mom and me being me, because I was always insecure about being me, was removed, and I found a panacea for my ills. It was called beer. It worked. And the more I drank, the further away I got from God, and the more I despised God. I will tell you, in June of 1988, the last person I wanted to have a relationship with was God. But we find out that God forgives, and God doesn't build any kind of bridges that are impossible for me to cross. And I went on a drunk from about 14 years old to 28, and I was homeless in the streets of New York. This time of year, I was walking around with a turtleneck, a coat, blood-stained and soiled clothes. I was wearing construction boots with holes in them, and I would carry a pint of Mr. Boston blackberry brandy. And I would hustle and panhandle, do all the things I had to do to get money to get another pint of brandy, because if I didn't, I'd get violently ill. And I slept in hallways and rooftops and things like that. My life today makes no sense compared to where it was. And no matter how much alcohol I would put into me, it couldn't remove the pain that I was feeling. See, the thing about alcohol, maybe some of you guys might experience some of this, is when regular folks take a drink, sometimes they get drunk, sometimes they don't, but at some point they put a lid on it. With an alcoholic, the craving is always intensified. It's never satisfied. More as a drink. And even though we don't want to drink and we say, I'm never going to drink again, Laurie talked about the mind. It's the obsession of the mind that'll take us back to that which is killing us. And there's a third piece to this. It's called the spiritual condition. It's a God problem. I had all three. I understood what was wrong with me. I understood about what was going on with the body, but I kept returning back to drink, treatment center after treatment center after treatment center, and my family couldn't believe what was going on. My dad was bewildered and frustrated. And what happened because of my addiction, a loving family went to war with each other. There was infighting in my home. Everyone had the remedy on how to fix me, but none of it was working because I just wasn't willing to stop. And it takes what it takes. For me, it took me. God brought me to the edge of a cliff. I always like to say this, that God will bring us, even those who aren't alcoholic, we all have our things that we have to get through, that we have to deal with, that we surrender to God with. And for me, God had to push me to the edge of a cliff where my nails were dug in. And when God got my attention on June of 1988, June 23rd, 1988, that's when I turned right back to the same God that I had cursed and despised and scoffed at for so long. And my Heavenly Father, the carpenter, took me from that place and placed me in the 7 treatment center. And suddenly, the clinicians and the treatment center folks I listened to. I wasn't trying to find a way out. I wasn't trying to manipulate or be deceitful. All the treatment centers I went to, I walked out of 2 of them. I brought drugs into 1 of them. In fact, I went to 7 treatment centers. In 6 treatment centers, I managed on my own From a young guy till around 28, I managed on my own 2 days of continuous sobriety. 2 days. In 6 treatment centers. The 7th treatment center in 1988, it's almost 25 years. What happened? I understood what they were talking about. I was willing to get better, and my family shut it down. My dad says, you can't come home anymore. There's no more money for you anymore. And he took everything I thought I was entitled to away from me, and I was left with the streets, and it was a nightmare. And it wasn't until I got sober that I realized what my family was really experiencing at a gut level, to let your firstborn out and to say you can't come home until you're willing to get better. But that's what they had to do to save my life. Anything less than that, you probably have someone here speaking other than me tonight. In June 23rd, 19, I was living in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in an abandoned building. And I couldn't take the pain of drinking anymore. And the same God that I had cursed, I begged. And the words were, Father, please take me from this. I don't want to die. And I wasn't thinking about going to treatment number 7. I wasn't thinking about being a member of a 12-step fellowship, which I am now. I wasn't thinking about speaking in front of people like I do now. It was these words, Father, take me from this. I don't want to die. And God, in His infinite mercy, took me from that and placed me in treatment and placed me in a 12-step fellowship and has kept me away from a drink or a drug this long. And I'll tell you, one of the great things we get to experience when we have a relationship with God, and we get it when we go to our 12-step fellowships, is having a support group around us. I don't even think about drinking anymore. I don't have to remember. I don't have to remember the pain of yesterday. I don't have to remember what it did to my family. I don't have to remember waking up hungover. I don't have to remember panhandling. Because if I had to remember that, who's remembering it? The same mind that knows how to get me drunk. So relying on my mind is a very dangerous thing. I hope to have lost my mind forever. In fact, I hope everyone in this room, you lose your mind, you'll be in great shape. If everyone lost their mind, you'd be doing great. If you think about the problems you have, who generates the problems? We do. By thinking and thinking. It's another addiction, thinking. All we do is think. Think. Figure this out. Let me think some more. Let me think some more. Let me think some more. And all we do is we wind up with high blood pressure, stress. We wind up drinking and drugging. We wind up with all these ailments because I'm always trying to figure out my life. But God has removed the thought about drinking from me, obviously the obsession to drink, therefore I'm not drinking. And all I do is continue to worship this power. I go to my 12-step fellowship regularly. It is my life. And I do this for a living. I'm involved in a treatment center business in my level for a living. The family who was completely taken apart, ripped apart by addiction, little by slowly got put back together again by a loving God. By me learning what I learned and then putting it into practice, because it was the only thing left for me to do. And taking an awakened spirit, taking God into my home, my occupations, and my affairs. And guess what? God is very contagious. When we live with God, when we walk with the carpenter, people want to get around that. People want to experience something like that. And that's what we do. And sometimes we don't have to say a word. We just have to walk a certain walk. Our deportment shouts. We're men and women with great answers. Huh? And my mom's suicide, it took me treatment. It took me going to my 12-step fellowship. It took a whole lot of prayer. It took a whole lot of meditation. And it took a whole lot of therapy to finally process that and put it in its place. There was a time where I wouldn't admit how angry I was with my mom for doing what she did. And then I was really angry with her for doing what she did. And now I'm in a place of forgiving her for doing what she did. Forgive them, for they know not what they do, is something I walk with when people fall short. And that's what happened to my mom. Right? What would God want me to do? So I forgive, and I move on, and I make prayers for her. And I'll tell you something else, and we don't have enough time to talk about this, but the great power of God. God hears our heart when it's broken. God hears the soul when it's hurting. One of the greatest gifts I've got is knowing that I am known by my Creator, Knowing that I walk with this power called God. After years of addiction, living in the street, being homeless, I stand here tonight with some integrity, knowing that I'm known by my Creator. In that, my God has given me some things that have happened to me in prayer and meditation, which put the pieces of the puzzle of losing a mom at 14. And guys know mom's everything at 14. Your world revolves around mom. I was ripped off, and yet God allowed me to get to a place to make peace with my past. And once we make peace with our past, we're able to be present and move forward with God. So I'm very grateful to a loving God. I'm very grateful to my 12-step fellowship. I'm very grateful for what treatment center folks do. And I'm very grateful for all of you guys for taking out on a Sunday night to spend some time with us. And perhaps we can be a little bit helpful with you as you walk this road. Thank you for listening.